Thanks, everybody, for joining us this afternoon. I'd like to start by introducing each senator and delegate, starting with the closest here to me. Let's welcome Delegate Cherie Sample Hughes, District 37A. Cherie is also our Speaker Pro Tem in Annapolis. We're very grateful to have that representation and that leadership from the Lower Shore in Annapolis. I'd also like to introduce you to Senator Mary Beth Carrozza, District 38. Senator Johnny Maltz, District 37. Delegate Chris Adams, District 37B. I've got Delegate Wayne Hartman, District 38C. And Delegate Charles Otto, District 38A. We're not going to do formal opening statements or anything like that. Each delegation member will have about a minute and a half, so 90 seconds, half of the time that you typically have in Annapolis, right? So we're going to have to really keep that clock moving. But we do want to give everybody the opportunity to respond and share their thoughts and their wisdom with us. Timers are going to be, do we have a timekeeper up front? There's my timekeeper. Okay. So I want everybody here to my right to take note of our timekeeper. Carrie will holler and make her way up here if we don't stick to our timing. So audience members, if you have a question, I'd ask you just don't jump out or interrupt the forum. We've got 3x5 business cards in front of most of you with pens. There should be plenty at the table. Please write your cards on there. Hold your hand up, and just like a bingo caller, someone will come around, grab that, and they'll deliver it to me. We're going to kick things off, and a little bit different than we did it last year. I think it makes the most sense as we're going to talk about specific pieces of legislation and specific topics. You guys and gals know the committee work that you did and the bills that you reviewed and worked hard on. So just motion to me if you'd like to jump into that one first, and we'll start with you, and then we'll make sure that everyone here on the panel has an opportunity to respond. So this is a pretty easy one. I think we'll go ahead and we'll start with Cherie, just because she's closest. But describe the differences, changes, or challenges you encountered during this most recent General Assembly session.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for welcoming us back to the shore. As you know, it is something to be in Annapolis for 90 days. To try to aggressively get a lot done. But with that being said, I want to say first that the atmosphere is positive in Annapolis, and meaning that the administration has exuberated the positive atmosphere with the staff. And I know oftentimes you might not hear that, but I speak to the staff, and I know that the janitorial staff and many others are in a position of positivity. And so that bodes well for us to be able to do our job in Annapolis. In addition to that, this year, you know that we had a lot of new legislators. And so going into any session that requires you to first educate them on how bills are passed, how to navigate the process, but then also to how to build a relationship. I remember when I first came in 9 years ago, my very first task for myself was to build relationships with the people throughout the entire state. It wasn't about just a piece of legislation, because what does that do if you don't understand where people are from? To answer your question about some of the challenges, as an Eastern Shore representative, it has some challenges. And one in particular is to make sure that our voices are heard by our watermen, by our forestry industry, and many others. And so there are some pieces of legislation that I felt and do feel that still needs to be vetted and needs to come forward to address the needs that we have here on the Eastern Shore. So overall, being in leadership, it requires you to, have that balance to work with others. But at the same time, I am from District 37A, and they'll hear about me loud and clearly when I have issues. So thank you.
Thank you, Cherie. Senator Carrozza?
Good afternoon. It's good to be home. I represent all of Somerset, Worcester, and more than half of Wycomico County. So when you look at this new session, it's new all the way around. You have a new governor, lieutenant governor, all the statewide offices, also a new makeup of the Maryland General Assembly. So you have to take that approach that this is new. For me, my assignment changed in two ways. My anchor committee is now the Education, Energy, and Environment Committee. So that is a significant change, having the energy portfolio and also having a new chair, Brian Feldman, who has been very open to new members and the input that we're bringing to the committee. Also, I serve on the Executive Nominations Committee, and the reason that's so important for the Shore is that I've been able to meet all of the cabinet secretaries that the new Governor Moore has appointed to go through the confirmation vetting process. So having each one of these secretaries, and of course it was a thrill to introduce former Mayor Jake Day, Salisbury Mayor Jake Day, for his confirmation hearing, but the opportunity to meet the new leaders coming in and also to be able to say, well, let me tell you what's important to the Shore. And it's already paid off in some of the casework that we're doing, as well as some of the priority issues we're working, whether it's for our farmers, whether it's for our fishermen, whether it's for our small businesses. So you need to take these opportunities that are new and run with them. And that's what I did this session.
Senator Johnny Mounts.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. It's an honor to be here with you today. I should have brought this, but yeah, so this was my first year serving in the Maryland State Senate. It was an incredible honor. It was a wonderful experience, and I enjoyed every minute of it. However, it was also very challenging. Even though the experience of the House of Delegates was with me and it was very helpful to me, it was starting from scratch. And when I mean scratch, on January 11th, we were sworn in, and until then, well, actually, it took several days because everything was new. I didn't have an ID card to get into my own building for a couple of days, which I think would have been a major problem, except for being in the House of Delegates. We know how to work around the rules every now and then. And so it was an interesting experience as far as going through a transition and having some background. But for me personally, it just was a great opportunity. It's a new venue, a new area, meeting many new representatives, some of which I had worked with in the past in the House of Delegates. And as it's been mentioned, a lot of this session was a transition, people getting to know people. We had some major issues locally that we dealt with. I'm serving now on the Senate Finance Committee, which has jurisdiction on business regulation, alcohol, and healthcare. And so I'm looking forward to doing more in that arena in the upcoming years. Thank you.
Thank you. Delegate Adams.
Okay, thank you very much, and good afternoon, everyone. It is an honor of a lifetime to serve you in Annapolis. This is my 9th year in the House of Delegates, and when we talk about challenges, I'll start by saying that having a new administration come in is a challenge, but also an opportunity. I was elected the chairman of the Eastern Shore Delegation representing Cecil down to Somerset County. We had two main goals and opportunities to work with the administration. First was to invite as many cabinet secretaries as possible that would be willing to present and share with the delegation, because in my 9 years, certainly we have 90 days, we pass bills, we kill bills and do everything, but in the interim, you as citizens rely on us to work with the administration to advance our shared goals, whether it's the environment, whether it's our watermen and our farming community, whether it's businesses. That has to happen in concert with the administration. For my first 8 years, we enjoyed that with a Republican governor, but truly 80% or better of everything that we do in Annapolis is not partisan. We work well together to get those things done. The other issue that we worked on the Eastern Shore Delegation was health care. And that is definitely a challenge right now. And front page news is our own telehealth system, but it's also other health systems in the state of Maryland where we have to review the formulas and how we go about paying for rural delivery of health care. As you start paying attention closer to what's happening here on the Eastern Shore, know that the Eastern Shore Delegation worked closely and strongly to make sure that the administration's voice was heard, the Department of Health, that they heard our voice as well. Because before it's all said and done, we need to find more sources of revenue to follow to our health system, and that is a challenge that we must meet. There's no other choice on that, and I'll stop there for now. Thank you.
Delegate Hartman.
A lot's been said already, so I'll try to take a little different direction. For me, as far as changes, I had some changes in as far as subcommittee. I serve in Ways and Means. I was both of my subcommittees were changed to the better. I serve on racing and gaming, and I also serve in revenues. Last year I served on local revenues. This year it's big revenues. So as far as subcommittee assignments, I don't think I could have asked for anything better, especially representing 38C, which has Ocean Downs. So racing and gaming fit in well there. I still serve as the chief deputy minority whip, so a lot of time is spent helping shape the messaging and the priorities for the caucus. I certainly enjoy that. And, we had to focus, on what we think all Marylanders want, whether regardless of your party. So education, public safety, and the economy, a lot of time was spent there. Have a new aide in Annapolis. I don't know if any of you dealt with my aide. I lost Rita, who was great. Will Smith, my new aide, great transition. Did a great job for me. As far as challenges, I'm running out of time. I think the last 12 minutes of session kind of describes some of the frustration. It's simple math. And, our numbers are getting less. We're fighting harder. We're doing a lot in committee. A lot of things we do you don't see. But when our voice is taken away, then, that's when things erupted, because that is all we have left at that point is for us to be able to verbalize. And, a very significant piece of legislation was moving forward, and we weren't being recognized on the floor. So hopefully we'll have time to talk about that more later. It was a chaotic end of session, so thank you.
Delegate Otto.
Thank you, Zach. The 445th session of the Maryland General Assembly is adjourned, sine die. The taxpayers are safe until January. But we did plenty of things to work at it too, and we got so many things now that are tied to the CPI and things. We'll probably see another gas tax increase in July automatically. Thank goodness I bought gas in Delaware yesterday for $3.45. It's $3.59 here. But I will say much of the same things that my other colleagues have said. It is a challenge. We have new characters. Well, maybe that's not the best term to use, but we have new individuals filling positions of leadership and new people on the committees. We had a lot of shift in our committees. I've been on the Environment and Transportation Committee for 13 sessions now, and we had a big turnover this year of people going to other committees, and we had new members that joined us that were just elected, and we're still having changes taking place now. I think we just had an announcement from Montgomery County delegate has just been appointed to replace Kirill Resnick, that's going to be Assistant Secretary to DHS. And my chairman is going to be appointed, Kumar Barve from Montgomery County, is going to be appointed to the Public Service Commission. And that's going to end, and that's going to be a change for us. He's done a good job for 8 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate Otto. For our next question, I'd like to talk a little bit about House Bill 741, the Economic Competitive Act of 2023. Now that neighboring states, including Pennsylvania, are lowering their corporate income tax rates, how does the state of Maryland help to stay competitive? And Delegate Hartman, we'll go ahead and kick that one off to you.
So, I think some of the challenges with that, a lot of it has to do with the fiscal note on the bill. And I think this bill was to reduce the corporate tax rate from 8.25% to 6.25%. And when you look at Maryland, they're going from 8.99, reducing 0.5% every year, down to, I believe, 4.99. Virginia is less than we are. Delaware has a lot of interesting tax law to attract corporations. So we need to do something to help. I mean, if you don't think businesses consider everything involved, including taxes, when they move somewhere, you have to take a second look at it. So the fiscal note came out. It only had consideration for the direct loss of that 2% of corporate tax. And there was no consideration, I think it has a lot to do with philosophy, there was no consideration to the benefit that bill, if passed, would do as far as bringing new business to the area, new employees, the payroll tax that's generated from that, new people here spending money, the sales tax. They don't look at, the whole package. So, you have things like that make it challenging. And then another thing we're faced with, and I think 3 times during the budget process, there were write-downs for revenue expectations for Maryland. You know, there's concern in the direction of the economy, and Maryland is you know, having more concerns as far as revenue projections than other areas. So, and I think that leads to the policies that we're trying to change. It's having a direct impact. It's showing up, and oh, that's a good idea. So anyway, you know, with that, there are a lot of things facing us, but I certainly think the concerns of the budget and the write-downs to our revenue projections had a role in that ability for it to pass.
We'll let representatives from the House go in order, and then we'll finish with our senators. So, Charles?
Well, thank you. My committee passed another bill this year, and I've voted against it for 5 years now. It's a paint tax. You're going to recycle paint through a private entity, and you got to pay an extra $1 a gallon for the paint. Now, I'm not sure how it ended up in the Senate. I haven't followed the bill because I just am not going to vote. I'm going to vote against it because you can go to Del Mar and get the paint without the tax. And I just find it horrendous that we go through these problems. And I think you're right on the corporate tax. If you can't make a profit and invest back in your business without paying it to the government, well, the good Lord only wants 10%. But I think the corporate taxes ends up with between the federal and the state government ends up about 41% in Maryland. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Delegate Adams?
Sure. So, I mean, citizens like low taxes, they like light regulations, they like welcoming environments to live in. Very few people I know have come to me and said, Chris, I'd like my taxes just a little bit higher. I want my regulations just a little bit more oppressive. So the point is that Maryland ranks 40th in our nation for economic policy, including tax policy. Only California, New York, Illinois, New Jersey have states corporate income taxes higher and more oppressive. So where is the challenge? Because you asked the question, how does Maryland become competitive? Well, understand first that we have a net decrease in population. People are leaving the state of Maryland, I think in many regards, because the policy of taxes is too out of line and not consistent with people's values. Who's gaining population? Guess what? Delaware. Delaware is absolutely gaining population. Why? Because first off, they're building homes and they're actually working to help citizens with better tax policies, 0% sales tax, for example. So the challenge moving forward, provided I have enough time to do this, is that our state has been through this before. The O'Malley administration did a lot of spending money and then turning around and have to raise the taxes. And that was the Hogan administration's mantra, is that they raised taxes 40-some times. And my concern is that our budget process, based on what happened this year, and surely what I think is going to happen next year, is going to bring rise to the same difficulties. We don't, as a state, don't have a problem spending money. We have a problem trying to figure out how we're going to pay for it. And that's the tax policy challenge moving forward. We have to make sure that everyone sitting here at the table and in the General Assembly knows that money, tax dollars are your dollars, and we need to spend that wisely. Else we're going to have a series of tax increases. Last thing, the corporate tax rate in Maryland is 8.25%. It is not competitive.
Delegate Sample Hughes?
Thank you. I think that what we also need to do is take a step back and look at what policies we already have on the books, meaning that the Department of Commerce has a plethora of tax credits for our businesses. And with that being said, we're steadily increasing those. Those are from veteran tax incentives to hire someone who's a veteran, to our ones for the wineries and vineyards, into which we have right here in Wycomico County and Dorchester County as well, businesses that can benefit. But the new tax credit is the cybersecurity piece. And what we're doing as a state is moving forward in that space to tighten up or tighten our belts in cybersecurity so we are stronger in our business aspects. So for this year, I am no longer, and I should have said this opening, that I'm no longer on the Health and Government Operations Committee. I've moved to the Economic Matters Committee. So having that opportunity to hear more about what the business's challenges are has been beneficial to me. And so I have a different perspective. to some degree, but I also know what we have done positively to support businesses through those tax credits. The specific bill that you mentioned, which is Delegate Wayne Hartman's bill, that fiscal note was going to go up to a tune of about $400 million by 2028. So that was how much the state was going to lose. And so that was certainly concerning because that's the first thing we look at when we get ready to make decisions on bills. What is the fiscal note? What does that look like? How do we overcome that? So I believe that certainly we need to continue to have that conversation, and we need to continue to work with the Chamber of Commerce and all those entities to figure out what those opportunities look like as we do when we look at other states to craft legislation. Those things still need to continue, but let's not forget the education piece for our businesses in the Department of Commerce of what we have in place that people are not already using.
Thank you.
And I'm
Senator
going to
Kloot?
take a little different approach since we've heard about this issue, but I'm going to take a step back. If there's an issue like this legislation, if the Salisbury Area Chamber of Commerce supports and the Maryland Chamber HB 741 to reduce the corporate income tax rate, that's part of, you need a strategy. You need to meet before session starts if that's going to be a priority. You need to then provide support when that bill is presented to testify in support, meaning that that bill, it may not go forward in the way it's proposed and introduced, but if there's significant support, if there's some leeway, talking about what the Speaker Pro Tem just mentioned, there's sometimes then opportunities, if you all are involved, to maybe shape it and to have some movement. So I just, and one case in point where we did this very effectively at the local level, it was brought to our attention by Tidal Health leadership that they were facing significant financial challenges due to the fact that they are woefully underfunded by the state. They met with us in the interim, and we put together a three-pronged strategy, and we're successful this session. One, we started working and putting some pressure on the Health Services Cost Review Commission to bring up the issues of fair reimbursement that the Tidal Health's been working since 2017. Two, we were able to get $9.5 million in the budget for trauma centers that are struggling. And three, we were able to put forward legislation for a commission that's going to look at the long-term fair funding for trauma centers in the future. So by doing that upfront work, we were successful with the outcome this session for Tidal Health.
Johnny.
I'll try to be to the point and short and save us a little bit of time.
As long as you beat the buzzer, you're good,
I'm gonna
man.
beat the buzzer. First, I want to thank Delegate Hartman for championing the legislation. And just remind everybody, the legislative process and the business community aren't synonymous. Like, the legislative process takes forever. It's ugly, it's inefficient, and it can be frustrating at times. But you got to remember, oftentimes it takes several years to get a bill through. And to get this bill out, to have it discussed and have it on the table, I think is totally appropriate. Governor Moore, the elections are over, the politics are over. We're into dealing with issues and situations and trying to promote the state of Maryland in our different regions. I spent the day yesterday with Secretary Kevin Anderson, and Governor Moore has said this. I mean, there's a lot of concern about regional competitiveness for the state of Maryland. And there are programs that benefit businesses to deal with taxes. However, the issue of the burden of taxation and doing business in Maryland, I think is very clear to Governor Moore from Secretary Anderson. I talked to him about the competition between Virginia and Maryland ad nauseum yesterday. So I don't think this issue is dead. I think it's very important, but everybody should keep in mind there are some challenges. The Board of Estimates review of our revenues being off by $500 million is significant. Okay, so everyone is aware of this, and I just think we need to give it time and continue to send the message to remember we need business to survive.
The blueprint for Maryland's future is going to create a universal pre-K system that will provide educational opportunities for low-income 3- and 4-year-olds throughout the state of Maryland. The nature of these questions comes back from our business community and our chamber members, and there's a couple of them. So I'm going to rattle them off, and then you guys can address the ones that you think are pertinent or that you have a response to. With dwindling childcare options on the shore, What kind of incentives should be offered to childcare centers to remain open, recognizing that they may lose a core member of, or a core demographic of the children that they now serve? So if those kids are now going to be going to school and throughout the school system, how can we incentivize those business owners to continue to stay in business and stay successful? What incentives should be offered to childcare centers to help them, or excuse me, what incentives can be offered to businesses who want to invest in their own childcare centers? So it's really a two-pronged question. If we've got childcare centers throughout the community who are worried about losing 3 and 4-year-olds, and that's a core of their business, and then also we've got business owners who are also looking at opportunities to invest in childcare, whereas now some of that need may be addressed through this program. Just wanted to get your responses on that. Do we have any volunteers?
So what I would like to start with is that we're actually ahead of the game, meaning that last year we saw the need as a result of COVID, how so many childcare facilities needed to expand. They didn't have the infrastructure, the funding to expand. So we put in funding in the budget to address that and to help that expansion piece. So I think that's something, again, it goes back to, and it's a whole lot of things that we do, but it goes back to education and finding out what is there, what we have done, and what businesses can benefit from. The part about should businesses offer childcare, I would say absolutely, because it certainly helps your employee to have a peace of mind to know where their child is and how they're going to be able to work throughout the day. And so to that end, it's necessary, and I say that we need to continue in that same vein. I've seen recently a couple of childcare facilities close right here in Salisbury, and it didn't have to do with the fact that they didn't have enough children. It was some technical things that they didn't address. It was some care issues that they didn't address. So the state came in and closed them down. But unfortunately, the parents had the brunt of the problem because they had to leave their job immediately and figure out what to do with their kids and try to figure out, see if they can still keep a job. And so those challenges exist. So it's not just the fact that, we have a shortage in childcare. We have some that are not meeting the standards that are required to stay open. So I wanted to bring that bigger picture. The other piece I would like to share is that during the session, one of our Eastern Shore delegates, Delegate Grice from Queen Anne's, he brought us together, and we also had at the table Shore Up Incorporated. That entity, that nonprofit, has provided childcare for years. And so we have at a crossroads right now to say the school system is taking these kids. What happens to our nonprofit that has been meeting the needs for years? And so that conversation is now started, and it should have been started a long time ago, but that needs to continue with our superintendents and our nonprofits that offer childcare. So it's a lot, but it's doable.
Well, and thank you for referencing that nonprofit community who helps to fill a lot of that void as well. It's not just private business.
Thank you. And I wanted to follow up on the Speaker Pro Tem's response, because the meeting that Delegate Grice pulled together had all the partners. And we had elected officials, we had the nonprofits there, we had some childcare provide. Number one, it was a first step, recognizing, and I think this is a challenge really to go back to your members, this is going to be ongoing. I mean, the blueprint it's now into implementation. And so as some of these issues are coming up, what we found out from that one meeting that Delegate Grice put together, and he serves on the Appropriations Committee, we all try to play to our different strengths of where our committee assignments are. I'm on the Education Oversight Committee, so you have appropriations, you have education oversight. And, what we found is that by pulling everybody together, that there were some conflicting federal and state regulations that we have to untangle in order for these private sector childcare providers to be able to move forward. Well, that is on us to do that, but, having all the players and the partners right there, I would come back to this group and say, we want to make sure our existing childcare providers are successful. What incentives do you think you need? This cannot be all on, obviously, the school system, because we're not building and expanding schools to resolve this childcare challenge that we have. So again, that was a good first step on what we started, but this is ongoing, and we will work with you during the interim as we move forward.
I know there was a bill that went through the Senate, and I believe it was approved by the House also, that dealt with certification for veterans, child care organizations. There's no solution. And, it's kind of funny because I come from a business background. And when I'm doing business stuff and the government says we have a program that's going to help you or save you, usually from the business perspective, you kind of take a deep breath and say, oh, my goodness, what's coming? How is this going to work, right? And I think bringing this up, the onus is really on us to develop a plan by talking to the daycare providers and the businesses that want to open up daycare and find out what it is that's preventing them from getting into providing that service. Ultimately, cost is going to be a prohibitor. We're going to have to be fiscally responsible. But from a solution standpoint, to me, this really needs to come from the grassroots. We have to get into the weeds and have the providers tell us what it is they need and take it on case by case. Every provider is essential. And how do we save them? I really can't tell you. Until we get that word from them what they need.
Thank you. Delegate Adams.
So let me just say, as an employer with 28 employees right now, I can certainly relate to the idea that when somebody has to leave, they have to leave. I don't know that an incentive is necessary, but certainly an understanding of the difficulties that families are having right now, trying to help young children have a place to go, and when they need help through the lens of daycare, that it be available. So if we as a state are advancing policies that are making it more difficult for businesses to serve in this sphere, or frankly, even be in business, then we better take that one seriously, because once that's gone, that's where it's going to fall. It's going to fall to where the person goes to work, and are they going to be able to work, and that's going to be the difficulty. The only other comment that I would make is very global, and that is that the Kirwan Commission created this multi-pronged approach on education. Adding pre-K to the repertoire of public education was a broad expansion. Do we have the classrooms available today to do this? Do we have the money moving forward as a county to afford this? And so these are the things that I think about when we start talking about other ways to incentivize or to put financial inducements forward, is that we're paying for something, but it's already expensive as it is because of how we passed this policy forward. My only closing remark after making that comment is that we as a state have an obligation to educate our children and do it in the best way possible. Please do not ignore the private sector or the nonprofits that offer this, because once they're gone, they're gone. And then now you really don't have a solution. That's something we have to avoid.
Go ahead, Wayne.
Kirwan was a big part of our committee when we were working on it. And one of my concerns when this bill was moving through was seeing the impact it was going to have to child care. So the only amendment I was successful in getting put onto that bill, and I'm not into growing government by all means, but we were able to get an ombudsman position in Kirwan for the purpose of helping these daycare facilities navigate the challenges of having a certified program. Because there is a partnership as far as a share percentage-wise of private and public 3- and 4-year programs. So, if anyone knows a daycare center or something, trying to navigate that, there is a position there. We inquired about it. In fact, it wasn't too long ago we inquired about the status of that position. So the position is there to help these child care facilities navigate the challenges of it. So there's also other groups that will help child care facilities, start a business. There's grant money out there, and there are opportunities. So it's important. I mean, for us to get people back to work, we need to have an adequate amount of child care. So,
Delegate Otto.
Thank you, Zach. I think my colleagues have made very good, valid points, but my concern is that the child care has not overcome the COVID close down that they suffered, and also the lack of employees that every industry has right now to take care of the needs of the children. And I would say that there should be some type of voucher system that would apply to allow us to continue to use the child care that in the private sector that we care for, and we know who the people are taking care of our children, and not have to force them into the public school system. And I also realize that as I think Delegate Adams said, do we have the facilities to take care of this? So that may be a subtraction modification or something on your income taxes too for childcare would be a plus for someone under the age of 5 or something, but.
Yeah, I think that's the thing that's lost on a lot of us laymen's, right, who don't have the exposure to the legislative process that you do is it's not just approving the legislation, it's then figuring out the regs and the implementation and how we roll this out and how we do it without disrupting business or disrupting, families and their households. I'd like to go ahead because we are going to come up on time before we realize it. Carrie, we're going to go ahead and knock it down to about a minute each for response. We're going to do a speed round, try to get through some of these questions. It's like a game show now.
That table over here better move because that backup, when that backup beeper comes, that table could be in jeopardy.
So family medical leave is, I think, something that's been on the mind of business owners and voters for the last year. It's been widely discussed. And so while legislation this session was intended to correct technical deficiencies with last year's past legislation, what do you feel that the corrective action that was taken, how do you feel that was done? Do you think it addressed a lot of the major issues? And then before we jump into answering, we have official reports coming from the Department of Labor here in Maryland looking at the high costs of administering this new leave program and the bandwidth for the actual Department of Labor to be able to administer it in an efficient manner. What are your thoughts on that? So did we fix the problems? Are we worried about the Department of Labor's bandwidth, especially since they've expressed it themselves? So anybody want to jump in first? I know we've got Chris and Delegate Sample Hughes.
So it's a 50-50 split. They're going to start taking contributions in 2024 and make the benefit available in 2026. So you need to know that this is a couple years out. But the report that they were brought forward, New York has this. And by the time they got multiple years down the line, they had to triple the rate of contribution because they got it so wrong. Too many people were using the program and or the program was being woefully underfunded through the contributions. Virginia, speed round here, Virginia passed a bill last year that allowed for a private version of this paid medical leave to be available. In other words, not a mandate on businesses and citizens, but rather if a person working in a business wants to have family medical leave and paid leave, you can get a private insurer to do that. Asking the state of Maryland to stand up their own insurance product, I fear is going to be actuarially not sound. We're not an insurance company. And before it's all said and done, because government's right in the middle of it, there are a series of other problems that are going to come about. We will spend the next 3 to 4 years fixing this because I think we moved too quickly on the policy. That's Chris Adams talking on it.
Chris and I'll call him my B and I'm the egg, 37 A and B. So, and we sit across from each other in the committee, so there's sometimes he'll see my facial expression and he'll be like, what, you disagree with that? You agree with that? But anyway, just real quickly. So the family and medical leave insurance program was and is intended to address those times where persons are not able to care for their loved ones without getting paid and have no assurance of the fact that how to keep food on the table, but know that they can still keep their job. So with that being said, the bill in of itself is a work in progress, is what I'm going to say. And being new to the committee, it was, a little bit of trying to catch up and see what they had done the years before. But what I did see is that we had the citizens at the table. What we were able to do this session is that we had a hybrid approach. We had some people on the Zoom, and we had some people sitting in our committee and telling us their concerns. So that included our business people as well as citizens that would be impacted by this piece of legislation. As it stands, it's going to be 50-50. The employees and the employer will be responsible for contributing to this fund. As Delegate Adams mentioned, the benefit won't be available till 2026, which still brings about a question of can Department of Labor sustain this? Because Department of Labor, they're still addressing unemployment issues, right? Yes. I had a call just on yesterday. A gentleman has 67 weeks of non-paid, for unemployment. So that's huge, but we got to allow the administration to ramp up and do what they need to do because it's under new administration and new employees, and they're lacking employees as well.
Thank you. Go ahead, Senator Carrozza.
Since we already heard about the leave response, I wanted to bring up quickly two other issues where I heard from the business community. It was the minimum wage, which originally introduced had the CPI, the inflation index, and also the tip credit bill. Because of the push and the engagement of so many employers and hearing from people from the shore, there was a push with the minimum wage, while it did go forward, accelerating the date to January 1, 2024. The inflation index was removed, and that was really important, I know, to our employers. Also, the tip credit bill, we heard from employees and employers on that. It was going to require that minimum wage be paid to all employees, and they took the tip credit away. We heard from, again, a lot of folks from the shore on that. It made a difference, and that bill did not go forward. So when you all are engaged, it makes a difference, and thank you for that.
Thank you. Go ahead, Senator.
The Family Medical Leave Bill did come through Senate Finance. I had the experience of working on it on the House side. One thing that wasn't brought up that I think is very important for chamber members to know is that the contribution levels were changed. So it was a little more than just a technical cleanup bill. It was originally 75 on the employee and 25 on the employer. That has been changed, so it's now 50-50. So I voted against the legislation. It's a very important issue. Family medical leave is critical. We just talked about childcare. This plays right into those scenarios. However, from my perspective, and you also heard some of the problems with the Department of Labor setting up a government-run insurance company that isn't going to be overseen like other insurance companies. The problem here is accountability. The private sector, there's accountability. They're regulated and they have consumer accountability. You don't do your job, people don't do business with you. One of the core problems with this plan is that it's going to be handled, run, and administered by the government.
Delegate Harmon.
While the state was running in this direction, I had a bill going in a different direction for family leave. Seasonal employees, as we know, the bill that passed several years ago created where after 106 days, a seasonal employee was eligible for family medical leave. I was trying to push that to 120 days, especially in this area there's a lot of seasonal employees. But as Senator Cruz, I believe, mentioned earlier with the corporate tax rate, if we're serious about those kind of issues, we really need to think about it early. As it was said earlier, we need to start meeting before session begins and have a plan. We need people up there voicing their opinion, saying why it's a problem, why it isn't a problem. After the bill, we had a great bill hearing. I went to C.T. Wilson, Delegate Wilson, the chair of the committee, and said, hey, you think we can do this or that with these? Like, there was nobody there testifying with you. I'm sitting there by myself with this bill, so who are you doing this for? There's nobody next to me to testify. So that's what makes it challenging. So if we're really serious about fighting these issues with this, I worry about the affordability of an employee. I mean, we hear about families living paycheck to paycheck. Now more of their paycheck is going away to a program they don't have a choice in. Then the employer, are on thin margins. They don't have a choice. Then we have the Department of Labor that couldn't, as it was said, couldn't handle unemployment. What's it going to cost to administer this program? What's the credibility of that department to handle such a program? To me, it's crazy. But that's the direction we're going. So I don't want to jeopardize the table back there.
Delegate Otto.
Running them over.
You okay?
Thank you, Zach. I'm fine. I think we've made some good points here, and I think the Maryland Chamber has come to the table this year is better than any I've seen in my times in the legislature of representing you well on these issues. And I'd like to hear from the people that are writing these checks to pay these bills, to pay this 50% insurance premium, and how do the people really want it? We're going to end up with a black market that everybody wants to be paid in cash. And that's the way it's going to end up with we make these mandates.
Delegate Otto, as someone who's worked in agriculture for a long time, my focus is always on how do we protect our farmers, and I know that our farmers are near and dear to your heart as well. And so, I'm going to combine two questions in the interest of time. And environmental justice and renewable energy have both been strong focuses throughout the last few legislative sessions. I have two sort of angles, and these are both crowd questions. So, in one regard, how do we make sure that while we are trying to protect the state's natural resources, we also aren't hindering the economic opportunities for farmers and for our agricultural industry, and we allow them to continue producing the food to feed the 99% of our population who doesn't farm. And then the second angle is, with the push for more renewable energy and electrification, we're starting to see that squeeze on the supply chain, which we've seen in other construction resources and materials. So, for example, we're 2 to 3 years out now for new distribution transformers. So how can we keep the grid reliable while facing these supply and demand challenges? And how can we also help to protect our agricultural industry, which is the #1 industry here on the Delmarva Peninsula?
I can't imagine making 2 runs on a charge in Somerset County with an electric bus. But it also concerns me about all the renewables. They'd like to see solar panels in every field here, and I don't know what we'll eat. We won't have watermelons or tomatoes or be able to feed the chickens either. But that's a property rights issue. But as long as the ratepayers and the taxpayers aren't subsidized, and that, let it play itself out.
Thank you, Delegate. We'll work our way back towards this way. Switch the order up.
We all know agriculture has such a huge impact on our community, so we have to keep ag competitive. And we also understand, the needs of our disadvantaged communities and balancing, their needs in agriculture. But, my concern, we're hearing about these bills for electric vehicles and so forth. Are we really helping with a lot of these programs that we think we're helping our disadvantaged communities? Are we? Electric is certainly going to be more expensive under wind energy or, creating solar farms. Electric vehicles, as we know, as we're pushing for them, they're more expensive. So are we really helping the people that we're trying to help? Because from what I can see, I know how challenging it is to buy a new vehicle today. Then add another $10,000 for an electric vehicle. Is that realistic for many people? So I think we really need to take a look back. And unfortunately, we're hell-bent is what comes to mind. We're going to pass these things without regard to the impact. I mean, it's like the administration, both at the national level and the state level, this is what we're going to do, and we're putting earplugs in when we talk about the challenges, looking at studies as to affordability and the impact that all this thing is going to have. But we don't care. We just know that's what we want, and we're charging ahead. And I think we're doing it irresponsibly.
Delegate Adams?
The original environmentalist is the farmer. Watermen can't make a living without clean waterways, and so those same people that are impacted by laws that we see come through my committee are the same people that would be willing, articulate participants in making a better world for us, because how can we on the Eastern Shore survive without the economic impact of poultry, agriculture, and our watermen? The problem with what I just said is everyone here agrees with that. In Annapolis, we lose on a regular basis on that principle because they don't view the Eastern Shore and some of these good folks as being fair actors in the participation of environmental justice. And that was the question about environmental justice. So let me just answer. Before there can be environmental justice for disadvantaged communities, there needs to be economic viability for people living here on the Eastern Shore. That is the middle ground for which every policy should pass in Annapolis. Is we want people to live and make a fruitful life here on the shore. We want that same environment to be clean and sustainable for generations. I'm a 5th-generation Eastern Shoreman. Why would I not want a clean environment? Everything related to renewable energy, because I think that was part of your question, is through the lens, from my perspective, I'm on the Public Utility Subcommittee and Economic Matters Committee, is through the lens of what is the ratepayer impact, and is it reliable baseload energy when we need it most? Most renewable forms of energy are simply not reliable in that way. We always will have the need for baseload energy. That's the policy problem on that end.
Thank you.
So my answer is going to be a little bit different on this, in that in looking at the way some of these policies converge in Annapolis, you see a very aggressive environmental lobby, a very aggressive environmental legislative agenda. If you look at the bills that were passed, there's a dozen or so major renewable energy bills that went through. And as we sit here today, we represent agriculture, a big portion of agriculture in Maryland. And I think our position on this is to fight like the Dickens to protect the interests of agriculture, because we know we know that environmental lobby and that environmental stakeholders are coming as hard as they can, and they seem to be very effective at asserting their will in the legislature. It's going to be a battle. That battle starts at the grassroots, right here, with every farmer and everyone who's affected by agriculture to be involved and to be vocal. Environmental justice is interesting. I mean, I spent a day at Department of Environment with Sharptown. Sharptown is an EJ location. It's going to help them with their wastewater treatment plant. Environmental justice is it's an oftentimes confused concept. It's important, but everything has to be balanced out, and it's important that we're loud and proud about how that balance affects us.
And I'm going to bring it down to a local example. We, as a Wicomico County delegation, and with the county executive coming up in person to testify, passed a Wicomico Sanitary Commission bill that was a requirement to put this in place so Wicomico County can go forward with its water and sewer plans in order to be in compliance with clean water federal regulations and to meet the current septic challenges that we're having throughout the entire county. So yesterday, several of us spent about 2.5 hours. We had the top officials from the Maryland Department of the Environment come down from Annapolis, making a commitment to working with us in Wicomico County. So as we're building out Wicomico's water and sewer plan for the future in compliance with these federal and state regulations, that we can stay on course. It is hard work, and we will be engaged on that, but that's a perfect example where you're bringing all these constituencies together.
Delegate Sample Hughes.
Thank you. And I'll continue on the same vein of the wastewater treatment part, just highlighting the fact that our Hebron community will benefit from the wastewater treatment plant replacement of about $4.5 million. So we were able to get that in the budget. So those areas or infrastructure that people really don't think about is still necessary. And so I was pleased to be able to see that. The other area that I just want to highlight around environmental justice, it is a tough road when we have to voice our concerns. Case in point, there was a bill by Delegate Stewart. He's from Montgomery County. It was renewable energy portfolio. And I really felt like I came out of my skin on this one because it addressed the fact that the poultry litter, the forest industry, as well as trash incinerator, those are all jobs, right? And so at the onset, I immediately said, how in the world can this happen to two major industries in our area, the forest community? But what I will say is that they were at the table. They were there that day in full force testifying. So I had some cheerleaders behind me too. But the point is that there's bills like that will totally impact our way of life and our economy. So the delegate got a little nervous, and so the bill died. And so with that being said, that was one thing we were able to, address. The last thing on aquaculture, this might not sound like a big issue, but Aquaculture Advisory Board, there was a bill that the watermen were very, very much concerned about because they would lose their seat at the table. 12 watermen would have been removed from that advisory board. For me, that's problematic. And so we were able, again, to meet with the leadership in that committee. And then the person with the vice chair, he ended up withdrawing his bill. So it does take a lot of work, but we do have our voice that is heard, but it does take a lot of work.
I actually want to go ahead and jump to a question from the crowd. So I'm combining two because I had like 12 and we didn't have enough time for that. We've got someone here who recently moved to the lower shore of Maryland, and they're a business owner. And they hear all the time that Wicomico and Somerset are two of the poorest counties in the state. And that's something that they hear. So the first question is, you guys are a representation in Annapolis, you guys and gals. Knowing that, going armed there every session with that information that we do have two of the counties here on the lower shore that are economically disparaged, what can we do kind of cohesive as a delegation to address that? And then the second part is, we've got, just like you have a whole new slate of leaders in Annapolis and elected officials in Annapolis, we've got a lot of new leadership here in Wicomico County. We've got a brand new county executive. We've got new council members. We've got new city council, county and city council members here. So What can you do to make sure that we're addressing that economic disparity in those two lower shore counties? And what is your plan to work with our new local leadership, recognizing that just like you have to build bridges in Annapolis, we're going to have to build bridges here at home too?
I've been chomping at the bit on this one. And when I saw this question, my first reaction was, first of all, to welcome this new business owner, okay, to welcome you, to tell you that you've made a decision to live in the best part of Maryland, to let you know that there are tremendous partnerships already in place. Why do I say that I represent the best Senate district in the entire state of Maryland? It has everything. It has tourism, hospitality. It has the 3 Fs, farming, fishing, forestry. It has 3 institutions of higher education, University of Maryland, Eastern Shore, Salisbury University, Warwick Community College, where we're leaving now to go to an applied technology center, which is meeting the needs of our future workforce. Our partnerships are strong. They can be made even stronger. Part of it is forums like this, being engaged in the chambers of commerce and your other organizations by doing a lot of the hard work before we go back to session. These partnerships, these meetings have to be year-round for us to continue to achieve our goals. When I look at our new leadership across the board, whether it's a new leader at Salisbury University, whether it's a new county executive, a new governor, these are opportunities. This Eastern Shore Delegation is taking advantage of that. This Eastern Shore Delegation, when you look at our leadership positions, our committee assignments, we are well positioned to deliver on the goals of the Eastern Shore. So my encouragement to you is to stay engaged and to work with us on these partnerships.
Thank you, Senator.
I'd also like to welcome you and congratulate you. You're not in District 37, which is Wacomico, Dorchester. We'd love to have you up a little bit higher in District 37, but you raise a good point, and it's interesting. But for me personally, what I do is, especially serving on economic matters, now on Senate Finance, we have a lot of the business investment programs, and they'll come up with these different various statewide programs. And when that program comes up, before I vote for it, before they get any support from me, I want to know exactly how it's going to benefit the Eastern Shore. Now, it may not be Somerset County, but if it is Somerset County, they get a lot of love from me. But I just try to hold every one of these programs to account to make sure if we're going to have a statewide program, that program is going to benefit the shore. And I don't always vote for all of them. That can be a tricky dance sometimes when you want to make sure you're getting the benefit of a program but not voting for it. But I usually will vote for it. But that program has got to benefit the Eastern Shore. And you can't do that across the board with all bills. But these business promotion, these business investment programs, we need to make sure that there are entities here that are participating in all of them.
Delegate Adams.
So I'll just take an opportunity to say why I ran for office. Back in 2011, I was attacked by our Department of Labor, the state government, and I had to fight for our company's survival, to be blunt. And we did that not in the courts, which we could have been successful. Rather, we did that in the legislature, because the fastest action was to make an appeal to the elected officials to change law and to make things better, and we won on that. It was my reason for running for office. I was a mad business owner because I saw very few business people in Annapolis making laws that affected me, and I won that election. At the same time, Larry Hogan, who was a business owner, came in and won his election. Citizens like business people that know how to budget, know how to negotiate, and know that their voice matters. After my 9 years in service, I'm on Economic Matters Committee. I've stayed on a committee that I love, and I have 4 subcommittee assignments, which is unusual, but I'm proud of the committee assignments: banking, consumer protection, business regulation, and now public utilities, because I've worked so hard to make sure even those that would disagree with me most view me as being reasonable in the eyes of a debate. Those are the sort of things that I would want out of my elected official when I decide I'm done with this. And most importantly, when you have a situation where on the Eastern Shore where you need something done, us as elected officials are your source. And most of these are not through the lens of making law. It's about connecting you with the administration. And then in this case, it is Governor Moore with his cabinet of secretaries and those people that work for him to help you live a better life on the shore. And those are roles that we play every day, whether we're in session or not. And I take that work very seriously, and I'm proud, more than you can imagine, to be able to do that work.
Go ahead, Delegate Hartman.
Thank you. So I have to agree with Senator Crozall. I mean, all the amenities and everything we have, but, you know, here, with all that in place, you're still saying you're hearing that we're some of the poorest areas. And I got to say, we're working hard to bring differentiation from the Eastern Shore and rural areas of Maryland to Central Maryland. What works in Central Maryland doesn't necessarily work here. And many bills, we offer amendments to strike the Eastern Shore. Just make, you know, minimum wage was a great example. What works in, you know, Montgomery County was already paying those minimum wages then, but when we're up against Virginia and Delaware, you know, that's our competition. When I tell people, you know, I can be 10 minutes in Delaware, it's, you know, that's what we're competing against. And we have a minority leader now who is from the rural areas, which is going to help us greatly because he's in Cumberland and he talks about how from his office, he could walk to West Virginia, and West Virginia is beating us in regulation and everything. So we are doing a good job, and we're getting better at it. But also things have happened that are going to change that. I think with broadband, the expansion of rural broadband, that's going to be a huge thing for us. I mean, what's real estate values when you can't, when you don't have, you know, broadband at the house? If you have to drive your child to McDonald's to do homework. So as we fix those issues, it is going to help us because real estate is a huge, you know, transition to gaining wealth and so forth. So we're helping that. The infrastructure for, like, I'm sorry I look that way. I keep looking this way. I'm glad my mic is this way because, so I glance this way to see Julie. I mean, to have the infrastructure in Wycomico County for water and sewer, that's going to help us be able to grow and expand. So things are in place, things are changing, and I'm confident it's going to keep getting better. So thank you.
Well, welcome. Thank you. Thank you, Zach. I'm representing Somerset County and Wycomico and Worcester County. I understand what you're saying. I've said for many years, we're poor and don't know it, but I've also said we're rich and don't appreciate it. As the senator said, the assets that we have, the natural resources that we have, if the state will leave us alone, we can make it good. We've worked hard at it. We have enterprise zones for Somerset and part of Wycomico. I think in the city is an enterprise zone. I know Chrisfield is. That gives some incentives. We work closely with the economic development folks, Dave Ryan here in Wycomico and Danny Thompson in Somerset. And the Lower Shore Council is a great thing, too, that has helped the economic development. We have opportunities for some grants through the Department of Labor and Housing and Community Development and things. We try to support those programs and do our best and give letters of recommendations for grants and things such as that. So I thank you, and I appreciate the opportunity today.
Thank you, Delegate. And we're gonna wrap things up with our Speaker Pro Tem.
To answer your question, again, I would say welcome as well. And to expound upon that, I would say engage in attending city council and county council meetings. And I'm the cheerleader for that because I used to serve on the county council here in Wycomico. So seeing members of the community and business community in the audience when we're sitting there making decisions, it certainly gives us either the thumbs up or the thumbs down what we need to do and how we need to strengthen that. So to all new businesses that have come to the area, specifically Wycomico and Somerset County, know that just that title may be we're the poorest community, counties, if you will, but we have our strengths. I am building upon those strengths. Just last year, or the year before, I should say, we were able to navigate the challenges of getting natural gas pipeline down here on the Eastern Shore to move from Wycomico, the part that didn't have it, to Somerset County. So as a result of that, now we have the industrial park in Somerset County now welcoming businesses. And businesses that are not your traditional ones either. We have some that are new and outside of the box. So those type of things, that infrastructure that's necessary requires us to fight, and we have to do it at different levels and different intervals. But it does put us in a position of being stronger and being able to meet some of those economic demands. Again, I'll go back to saying the Department of Commerce, those programs that they have, the ones where it helps for revitalization areas. If you put your business in a revitalization area, then you're able to utilize that tax credit. Employing additional people, there's a $3,000 tax credit for that. The rural community sometimes get a bad taste in people's mouth. But if you look at the incentives, and like Delegate Otto said, the blessings that we have, we can build upon those. Hospitals, for instance, we're strong, okay? We have models right there in Chestertown, Maryland, that has a whole collective way of addressing the aging community. That kind of sounds like Wycomico County and Somerset County and Worcester County. And so we want to take kind of that model and utilize that in Somerset County, say for McCready Hospital, which is under challenges right now. So I think that we have what we need, the tools that we need, but we still have to do it with you as new businessmen, businesswomen, and all of the community citizens at the table, because otherwise it doesn't get done. And then you want me to do the closing remarks? I will just close with saying thank you again for allowing us to come back and give you a very small portion of how the session runs. I welcome you to Annapolis. We are welcoming people back at the table for testimony and to be able to see us on the floor. I wanted to highlight just a couple of bills that don't often get talked about. We highlight those big ones, but, you know, we made some decisions this year as it relates to the election board. I see our director here from the Wycomico County Elections Board and our judges. You know, oftentimes we're begging for people to serve as judges. Well, we did pass legislation that will increase the money for them to be able to serve. That might be able to provide an incentive because they were struggling to find people to serve. And so that would get them at a minimum of $350. To serve on that day, which is your civic duty, basically, to serve. So the 529 program, I don't know if persons have heard about that, if they had their families involved in that. That was horrible what's happened, but what we did do, we made sure that now that program is going to be monitored by our treasurer for the state of Maryland. He, a matter of fact, was the chairman of Economic Matters. So he has his pulse on the issue, and we know that the Treasurer's Department will help address that, reform it, and really help these families that have put their hard-earned money into a program to address the needs for their college-age students. So while we have those big issues that you hear about a lot on TV, there are ones that you don't hear about that we are making strides on. And so I encourage you to come to Annapolis, and you know, it'll be here before we know it. So thank you again.
So let's give our entire delegation a big round of applause. Thank them for being here.